she doing?
Stable, and her vitals are strong.
Blood panels show no irradiation. Good. You'll step up this protocol
every 4 hours, yes. We know what we're doing. Another day of observation, and you're all clear.
Hey everybody, this is PD from the Spinner Rack, and today I'm doing a video on Val Call. Well, I want to thank you for watching my Civil War and the Fantastic Four video. So I'm doing another Fantastic Four video, which is on Sue Richards, or which I would call the Pregnancies Saga, right? So here's a classic pinup of Sue. Right, I just got this video here, but we're gonna scan through this, right? So Sue Storm was the love interest, and she brought in more of the love plot, the initial love triangle between Ben, Reed, her, and Ben, which is in the first issue. In issue 4, they do a love triangle between her, Namor, and Reed. Right? So at some point, she gets a lot of negative mail. So then they give her the invisible force field. She's still the girl in the group, so she does like girly things. She kind of gets jealous from time to time. She goes and wants to be an actress. She stops in the middle of a fight to put her hair on. At some point, she gives up on this Submariner, and we'll get to this part. I was gonna just play this down. Here's a classic shot of homage to when she was the Invisible Girl. And here's Reed, taking an image of her. Right? And we get to the wedding, right? So what do? Like Superman has had a bunch of phony weddings to bunch of girls that didn't last too long. I think there was a female on Krypton, a couple phony marriages to Lois, then the Earth 2 marriage to Lois, which happened later. But they were gonna let's do a real one where they'll be married and they won't be like flashback into the past or the future to do this marriage. So they do the marriage issue. At this point, this is at the issue 44, where Dr. Doom is injured, right? And he's reading about the wedding. We cut to the wedding, there's a lot of action, and for some reason Reed is still in his FF outfit, but how would you know who he is? Here's them. Now, the wedding subplot didn't go too strong, right? But they did do a very long engagement. I'm pretty sure they were engaged from when the issue started, so that's 40 issues. Who knows what that was in comic time, but they finally got married. And the continual subplot is them trying to have a honeymoon. So since I said it's a pregnant saga, I'm going to try to give you when this is issue 55. That's a little late. That's too much of a gap. So I think Sue got pregnant around issue 65, which would be around the Century Sinister. When they go on vacation, we're going to show a little bits of this. So we're just going to kind of cut through this period, which is the greatest period in comics, but at the same time is not necessarily the greatest period for Sue. Right? See, she will, and this is something they showed in the Fantastic Four movie. Where Sue decides for some strange reason she wants a normal life because I don't know why. So supermarkets instead of supervillains. And Reed is like, so this issue, I believe they go to this island, they run into the Kree Century, right? So then when the alien, that was like 65 or 64. I think there's also the Ronin issue. So one of those issues, that's when we see them in bed, I think in the Ronin issue. That's like, I think 62 or something like that. Around the annual, which is around that time, Sue faints, right? So she's picked up by her husband and carted off. And they don't, she's giving him scare, give him some water. She calms down, we find out she's gonna have a baby, right? This is Frank Giacoa and the FF are happy. So you can see with the Fantastic Four, they're always trying to be progressive and be different. And like Superman, they had the Super Sons, but you wouldn't go through the pregnancy. So Reed, since they were taking the idea that they were realistic, they would take a year to do this pregnancy subplot, right? But the point of this video is show you that though they were very revolutionary as far as their comic book storytelling, as far as females, you see, Sue trying to put on a new dress, and this is the hook of what she's going to be doing in this story, in this great period, right? Then the Thing goes crazy by the Mad Thinker, and Reed does not want Sue there because she's pregnant, so he has to get her out of there, right? So she can help him, like, nope, Crystal, take her away. Now, Crystal could be more help if she stayed, but they take Sue to the police. And then, of course, because the Ben is trying to kill him, they have to save Reed. So she saves him. So it shows you that even though she's the girl of the group, she worked with the police and she saved Reed. But at the same time, she's got Crystal to comfort her. Now, Crystal is very powerful, but she just plays the girlfriend in this storyline, right? And I think the fans are kind of falling for Crystal. So here is the Mad Thinker's robot. He's out to destroy the FF. Now the Thing has been fixed by Reed, but they don't know yet, right? So this monster's coming, this Mad Thinker's robot. This is the most awesome android. Forget what happens in Spider-Man against this one. This is and Sue, she finally got the cover it's not by herself, but she kind of take the lead on the cover, right? I guess outside of FF5, right? And this monster's coming, and of course we have the grief on Sue's face. Great shot. The monster's coming, the team is out. They tried to save Ben, they don't know if they did it, right? So Sue's trying to hide, can't hide from this creature. Ben wakes up and saves her, right? But she saves Ben, and by trying to save Ben, she falls out. So she has this, so even though she has some moments, she kind of keeps kind of fainting and stuff like that because she's pregnant, right? So she can't be that active while she's pregnant. So Reed comes and takes her off, right? So what else do you do with a pregnant woman? Get her off to safety, right? What else would you do in the 60s, right? Basically takes her away and then says it's going to be the end of the FF. Right? So they decide, you know what? They're going to take a trip to California from New York. And the Silver Surfers come back and it disrupts their plans. So the Watcher says, you got to come with me, Reed. Right? So carts them away. Right? So they do this whole long storyline. I cut through all of that because Sue is not in any of it. Go through all these great things. So during Sue's pregnancy, they're still doing some magical stuff to go through the microverse. this is just a big fight that they had with Daredevil, Spider-Man, and Thor. And it's kind of, I think Kirby forgot how powerful, how that Daredevil was just human. So there's a lot of correction going on in here. But about when Reed's about to take out Daredevil, Sue comes. Sue shouldn't be here, right? And it says a terrible mistake. He's a real Daredevil. So she clears everything up. And we move this storyline along. Sue, once again, so they, catch up. They have their romance. And they cart Sue away, right? And something else is happening. So they got to keep her away from the window. She wants to know. She's very curious, but they tell her to go to sleep. So and then they say, oh, what's going on behind the window? So you're going to see, so there's a shift that's going to happen, right? So then the doctors comes and they're trying to keep her. She's always worried about the team. So Surfer calms her down. And then here's another tidbit. The doctors find something that's not cool, that her red blood cells have been large and there's these cosmic things going on within them, right? So her scan is coming up crazy, right? So they don't know what the effect will happen to the baby. And then Reed finds out about it. He knows now that, his baby could be deformed. Who knows what it could be, right? But he doesn't want to tell Sue. So he comes in, and then they have just being kind, not to worry her. She knows he's hiding something, but they're just hanging out, right? So at the same time, Reed's trying to take the team some rest and relaxation. They go to, I think, to Tutanzuma. But at the same time, Sue's in a bad place. So, of course, they have to go to the negative zone, right? Of course, it says let there be life. So it's going to be childbirth, but it's not going to be easy because of the FF, right? So realize that they can kill Sue and the baby. They both might die because of just cosmic radiation in the blood. And then they're seeing it, and there's not much they can do. The power of so they decide to get something that's powerful to maybe drain that energy, right? So they run into Annihilus. Annihilus is very powerful, right? So this is only going to set them on their mission even harder, right? They're going to go out there and they get some energy from Annihilus to deal with now this is a key point. So storytelling wise, use the energy from the cosmic rod. And they take some, they toss back the rod to Annihilus, and the doctors use this to save the baby. And this point, which is great, Reed is not the doctor in here, right? We're still so happy. But then, after she gives the baby, of course, you see her, she's awake, and then she got her sleeping, but she says amen, right? So now something happens. After all this time, they decide, since she's kind of on a maternity leave, they need a replacement. So they decide Crystal's going to be it. And they remember that she's almost more powerful than the whole team, right? And she's confident. But she's like, hey, I can handle this. Then there's another key point. Reed is like, no, you're too young. And he said, I'm the same age as when she was born. So that means Sue is either 18 when she joined, when they went up in the rocket. She's either like Johnny just went to college. So during this period, it's what, 73? Issue 73 or something like that? Maybe it's later. So I guess it's late, it's 81. So he went to college at 51. comic book time. It might, I don't even know. No, a year from the babies got born. The baby's still in what's the name? So it's like a year or so. So she's, I guess, 18 or 19. That's considerably younger than how Byrne had her, right? So they go after the lizard, and she makes short work of him. And this is where Crystal eclipses Sue. You see, she's more of an equal to the team, right? And what happens the next issue? Stan and Jack realize they made a big mistake. She has to go. She has to leave immediately. So they make corrections after this because she's with them, but they have an Inhuman story against Maximus. They have another story with Doom, and then Sue comes and saves the day. And kind of highlights Sue a little bit more. They have her motherly instinct becoming this thing where she's very protective of the team. So she kind of ends out the year strong as a working mother, and she knows judo and stuff like that. But they realized that it was too easy to replace Sue with Crystal, so they kind of take her out, and then she leaves. She winds up leaving around, I think she leaves around 90 something, maybe. I think so. No, it's maybe after the Roy Thomas. So when Byrne takes over, let's roll it back for a second. Right, so Byrne takes over, and Byrne decided to adopt Sue as his character he was going to work on. Now, it's not obvious because everyone gets it in the Byrne books, but in this is a period where they go in the negative zone, 254. So we're dealing with the other pregnant period, right? So not different from a pregnant pause. In this issue, mine and Mantracora, they're on kind of a vacation, and on this vacation, they decided to have some alone time, right? Then after this alone time, they get attacked by the locals, right? They make short work of them, but we've set up this thing that they've, this is a sex scene between the two of them. They've had this moment. And Mantracora knows who they are, and at the same time, they say, all right, we'll hang out, we'll take this, we're not gonna let their guard down, and Reed pays for it with his mind. His mind is wiped. Sue is there, and they know that Reed is now dead. The man, they drained his mind from his body from Mantracora, who's using this mind to fuel the ship, right? So let's keep going. So this is where Sue kind of does the lead, but it's not for a long time. She was in the lead before this, a couple of issues. Let's stick with that. So this monster recognized, I think it's from what's the name? The Marv Wolfman run. This monster recognized Reed and using all his minds, and he stole Reed's mind, right? So they make short work of this monster, but they can't get home. The pathway to the negative zone is gone, so they have to go to the interface and, ultimately die, right? There's no way from antimatter to interact with matter. That's why everything explodes. So this is the Annihilation Gambit. Annihilus is on the other side. Fantastic Four is in the negative zone, and they are staring at their doom, right? They have a ship, and they're going close out to it, but there's not much they can do. And this is key. All this issue, Reed is doubtful, but in his head, and vocally, he's positive. In his head, he's doubting everything. But Sue realizes this, right? So this one of the strongest periods. At this point, I don't think she knows that she's pregnant yet. But during all this heavy action, Sue's involved, right? And they get out, they are back, but at the same time, They realize Alicia and Franklin have been injured by an office, right? Pretty much tortured. So while they take Franklin to the hospital, Alicia's there too. It sounds like it's the end of the Fantastic Four, where they're going to have Franklin, who's human now. Remember, he's human. He doesn't connect to his powers. But at the same time, Rita's like, no, we've tried that before. We can't just be human. So ultimately, Ben is happy. They're still in business. And Ben finds out the hard way that Sue's pregnant, right? She says the rabbit died, and you see Franklin, who was injured. Now remember, he has no power, so if he did have powers to do anything or save anything, Franklin could save himself, right? This is going to play out a little later also, right? So let's keep watching. Right, so at the same time they go back to work, they have to deal with the Scroll Milk Saga, right? So it's a great period for the FF that Sue has not been sidelined because she's pregnant. She's an active part of the team. Say Sharon Selleck, she tells about how strong a force field is, and they talk about the actual resolution of that story. And then they get into this big brawl with Terax and Dr. Doom, right? And for some reason, Reed isn't around, right? So she's taking care of a kid. They have a babysitter taking care of Franklin now, and she's going to New York, and at the same time, she gets accosted by none other than Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom smacks the pregnant. Now, this, I would say, you have to remember, at this period, I think it's 83. No, I guess it's 83. Yes, 83. So around 85, I think my stepmother was pregnant. So it was similar because she was still working up to the last 3 weeks of her job, right? So there's only one extremely shocking thing that happened after my stepmother's pregnancy. Her eyes were bloodshot red, and not just bloodshot red, they were entirely red. So it was a tough thing to see. But Sue, let's get back to the main story. Dr. Doom is like, hey, your team's in trouble, and she's a warrior, but now your team is about to die. So sees the team in trouble, and we see them fighting Terax, and she goes out there to fight. So she is not playing around, right? So for strange reason, Rita isn't around. Dr. Doom faces a bad demise. She comes in, and it shows you she's in action, but she's pregnant. But at the same time, she doesn't second guess needing Reed. So she asks Reed. He doesn't show up. And now Dr. Doom is in the fight. And when Silver Surfer comes in, you see something else happen to Sue, but not just one little hit could hurt Sue. So she comes back, she's made it through, and she's still pregnant. And then the Submariner shows up, right? So it's just action-packed for Sue this time, where we compare how dull it was for her around this great storylines. Now she's knee-deep going out into Canada with the Submariner, and she'll run into the Alpha Flight. We're not going to see him here, but you see we got this whole new sort of thing that she's facing. She faces off against the Master, right? So now they got to find Reed Richards. Once this plays out, now the other thing is saying she's not only that, she is a, this is very British of John Byrne. I think he did it in X-Men where Angel kisses Aunt Jean on the lips. And I saw that as a kid before I saw this. So I was prepared. So otherwise I would have been really upset. But in seeing the other thing happen, saying, okay, maybe if I was adult enough, this could happen. But it's also playing to Sue being kind of, being not necessarily, she's definitely not what you consider an independent woman, but I would call this is her getting an 80s makeover. It's kind of, well, we're going to see more of this issue, right? So let's keep playing, right? So I want to stay here showing you that she's adult or she has this moment. And at the same time, there was an issue before this. I think it's like issue 190, where the Fantastic Reed is working the job. The Fantastic Four is broken up, and she goes to the Submariner, and she's like holding the shoulders, this, that, and the other. So they have a connection. Even though she loves Reed more, she still has a connection with the Submariner. And no one, and writers haven't shied away. I think that's Marv Wolfman. So this is the first to show that, hey, they might have kissed at some point, or, they definitely have some feelings for each other, but her feelings for Reed are stronger, right? So the Silver Surfer who saved the day, he's like, I came here because I saw something towards, it might be the thing that got rid of Reed. So they go to, what's that thing? They go to this. We see, so the Silver Surfer is able to go back in time. We'll at least see back in time. And here, Sue takes the lead, right? They know Reed has been teleported away. This is the same thing that happened to the X-Men. But at the same time, the Fantastic Four are like, you can't go, you're pregnant. And then she is not invited to debate. So she shuts them down. And then they go out and they found the Watcher and they go out in space to find Reed, right? And they have the FF are respected. They walk down there and they run into Reed. And Reed is being tortured for all time. So they're executing him, right? And the Watcher says enough, and he can intervene because they're going through the trial of Valerie Richards, right? There's a side bit because it's 8 month. The Byrne is there, and Reed says guilty, right? But at the same time, his teammates, everyone's surprised, even his teammates. This leads into the Marvel bickering, like what Stan would do, but Byrne and Stern and Claremont, they would turn this to Marvel disagreeing, right? So she doesn't agree, and then Ben trusts that he has a point, and he starts explaining how things are and clears it up, and he wins over most of the universe except for Lilandra. So then Galactus shows up to clear things up for all. Him and Eternity explain the whole thing of Galactus, and they're all dumbfounded. So Sue's finally on maternity leave. So even this is even more action-packed than her. She's painting, right? In the house. Reed's there finally. We finally see him. But at the same time, she's having some complications. She's having these spasms or baby kicking. And she has nothing like with Franklin. And she doesn't know, but it goes away, right? So then we see her, this is right before Secret Wars. She's with Alicia, where Alicia's kind of hinting that her and Ben have broken up, but it's hard to read. She can't tell if Alicia is sad or not. She's just, she's emotionless. She's keeping to how she was kind of done in the Kirby run. And we see the FF going off into the Secret Wars, right? So once again, after all this time, Sue is finally sidelined, right? But she was active. So then Byrne one-ups it one more time. He does an not action-pack, but a story with her being very pregnant, and she can't leave because Alicia has gone through something. So she has to lead the fray into the same park that the FF had left, taking blind Alicia and powerless Franklin while she's pregnant. So she's taking them along with her, right? So she goes out there, she leads them to the side, And in Central Park, which is a great shot, she sees a bunch of heroes come by. Then she sees someone looks like Reed and Johnny, but it's like, who's with them? And it turns out to be, I mix up these pages, but let's see, Reed. Something happens to Sue. The baby, a friend described this as a baby kicking. Get it to the hospital, but that was the page that was supposed to come earlier. That She-Hulk is the member, right? So they get Sue to the hospital, and they realize they have to get Dr. Octopus to save her. He knows irradiation. Maybe he can help out Sue. So everyone's just waiting, and Reed is going off, but Sue is kind of like, no, this is a little scary, isn't it? And while he's gone, something happens that everyone is grief-stricken, and they can't believe this is how it ended, right? And how did it end? The baby died 30 minutes ago. So it's even more powerful than this. And this was a shocking moment for me as a reader, because I had plans for this baby to join the X-Men and all these plans. Her and Franklin, or him or her and Franklin are in the X-Men, that type of thing. And I was like, no way, this is wrong. This is not the right way to go. This is not storytelling. That was the kid in me who only wanted the FF versus Gladiator, the X-Men versus the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. I wanted those type of stories every month, right? So this was not the case for me. And then maybe a couple years later, I read the whole run, and then I got it, right? So they have this quiet time, right, where Sue has gone through this, and they're helping her out post losing the pregnancy of such an extreme one. And this, not getting into it, this would lead Sue into becoming the Invisible Woman. She would join the team a few issues, maybe 5 or 6 issues later. She would be attacked by the Psycho Man, turned inside out, and then ultimately she would find her true strength, right? Become Invisible Woman. At this point, she lost Reed, and she's reminding herself of the past in her moment where she's finally alone, right? So everything's good, right? So everyone's going through a bunch of stuff. They go through kicking Sue and Reed out of the team. They go through, Simonson brings them all back, and the family's back together. Then we have the heroes room. No, then we have DeFalco, where everything goes wrong. And then Heroes Reborn. That would lead, and then Heroes Return. And this would be a portion of the Heroes Return. We'll just come on, introduce Valeria. Now, Valeria is the same, if you watch my Dr. Doom video, is the same name as Dr. Doom's girlfriend. So why would the Fantastic Four's kid be named Valeria, right? This kind of leftover plot with the Rachel plot from the X-Men, where Valeria kind of shows up. Sue is totally not happy. And then, of course, we have this tender moment. But this is some connection to Dr. Doom. At some point, Reed was controlling the Valeria as Dr. Doom. So this is possibly an all-time timeline or a hint that, why she's Valeria Von Doom, right? So Valeria should be Dr. Doom's daughter, but they're kind of hinting it that this is Dr. Doom's daughter for some strange reason, right? So they introduced this X-Men sort of plot, and then the next writer, who was doing a pretty good job, R.I.P. Charles Pacheco, but then he said Franklin, who shouldn't have any powers, saying he has to make it right. So for Heroes Return, they use Franklin, and this storyline, they use Franklin that, He knew that his mother was scared during this period. She was going to be a sister. So we basically have Franklin fixing it. But remember, he didn't have any powers when the baby died. And at the same time, the hook of the baby dying goes back to the first pregnancy, that they used the cosmic rod to cure Sue and the baby, right? And Franklin. This time, there's no cosmic rod. When Annihilus appears, he doesn't have the cosmic rod. So there's no way for them to search, grab it, and use it for the pregnancy, right? So this thing where they brought Valeria back, and we'll get to this last segment, where she shows up pregnant because of what's her name? It's just not the way to go. And I don't think I've ever connected to Valeria, since she's named after Doom's ex-girlfriend, and Franklin put the baby back in her stomach when the baby died, right? And this is supposed to be the Quesada period where death is real, but not in this case. And Valeria's been a mainstay in the book. So, but not for me. She's not a real character in my opinion. So I guess that's about it. But it's great to see the second period of her. It was a very creative and action-packed period, and Sue was very much involved, even up to the end. So, Spinner Rack will have to be out.